Welcome to chapter 3, where we're talking about the setup for color grading. Now, color grading isn't just about what to wear. It also has to do with your environment, kind of what your room is like when you're doing color grading, how your eyes react to things, as well as some of the hardware that you're using. So we're going to go over some of the best practices for setting yourself up for success. Now, can you make color grades that look good without setting this stuff up? Absolutely. But you're going to have higher quality and more consistent results the closer you kind of fly to these guidelines. So the first concept is the color grading environment. So if you were to Google color grading suite, you would come up with a lot of pictures of kind of darker rooms with gray walls. And there's a very specific reason for that. This is a great example here. The way that our eyes react to colors kind of changes depending on what's around us. You can see this for yourself if you're, in a really dark room and somebody turns on the light and it kind of hurts your eyes for a little bit, and then eventually your eyes get used to it. That's because your eyes are always adapting for the colors and the brightnesses and everything that are around us. So the big idea behind setting up a room designed for color grading is you want to make it easy for your eyes to see the image that you're working on in the most neutral way possible. For instance, if you had a really, really bright room and you're working on an image, you might make the image a little bit brighter to kind of compete with the light that's falling on the monitor. Same thing as if you have a pitch dark room, you might make your image really, really dark because in comparison to everything around you, it looks bright. This happens with brightnesses, but it also happens with colors. Our eyes are always adjusting to different colors of light. That's why you can set the wrong white balance in a camera and an outside shot might look blue, whereas your eyes, everything always looks just about right. Our eyes can adapt almost instantly to different colors, and a camera really can't. So what we really want to do is set up most of the things that we see in a room to be the right brightness and the right color cast so that it's not negatively influencing kind of the way that we correct images on our monitor. Back to this setup here. You'll notice that some of these pictures, everything's kind of bright, but a lot of these, they're really dark. Like look at this room, it's really, really dark. And there's a couple things to notice about this. One, first of all, obviously it's a darker room, but it's not completely dark. We actually have this kind of backlight back here, and we have a little light here. So it's not pitch black, but it is dark enough to where you can concentrate on the screen and you won't necessarily make it brighter or darker just because of the lights in the room. And the idea here really is just to make this on the darker side, but still have that ambient light. There are different measurements of brightness and everything that people can get really nerdy about when it comes to how bright or dark your surrounding lights should be. But if you get it where the brightness on your monitor isn't hurting your eyes and you aren't really squinting or struggling to see your monitor, you're probably in a pretty good place. There's also a reason all of these walls are gray, because remember, if we had something like a sort of off-white, kind of yellowish white wall, our eyes are going to kind of get used to that, and anything that looks actual white on the screen is going to look a little bit blue, and we don't want our surroundings affecting the way that we look at our image. So all these walls are ideally a perfect neutral gray, specifically this gray, 18% gray. This in the photography world is what they call just about as neutral as it gets. This is the middle exposure and there's no color cast or anything like that. So this is really the best thing to compare your images to. And so the idea is to get paint that is neutral gray. And it's actually surprisingly hard to get a neutral gray paint. You can search for neutral gray, but oftentimes it comes in like little tiny tubes like this. And you sure would think that you could get white paint and then mix black into it and have it come out neutral. But that just doesn't work because of how modern paint is mixed. So you really have to get a formula for neutral gray, which there's actually a really great formula here at flandersscientific.com/tech-resources. All the way at the bottom, they have a pretty darn good formula that you can get at Home Depot for neutral gray paint. And I've bought this and I've tested it and I've compared it to gray cards and it is pretty darn freaking close. Like as close as you could possibly get without just being a super nerd. For affordable gray paint, this is pretty awesome. So what I do is I take a screenshot of this and bring it into Home Depot and ask them to mix this up for me. It starts with ultra deep base and then makes these numbers. I don't know what these numbers mean, but I give it to the lady behind the counter and she usually makes the paint. That's great. You can also buy insanely expensive, really nerdy gray paint for $115. I'm thinking this is probably not that important to spend $115 on. But if you want the best of the best, this is what it is. The other thing you'll see in these grading suites is these kind of backlights that go behind the monitors. This is called a bias light. And the idea here is that, yeah, you want a light that's not too bright, but will kind of give you some ambient surrounding light and kind of light up that gray wall. But you want this light to be the same color temperature as your monitor, which is generally 6,500 Kelvin. So you can search Amazon for a 6,500 Kelvin backlight, and there's all kinds of different solutions there. Any of these will work just fine. As long as it's actually 6,500 Kelvin, put that behind your monitor with some gray paint on the wall, and you'll have a room that's set up pretty well for color grading. You also want to make sure that there isn't any glare on your monitor. So this light behind me, I generally turn off when I'm actually doing color grading because there is a little bit of glare on my monitor. Plus it's kind of a warm tone. I want to make sure that any light that I do have is 6,500 Kelvin because it matches the color temperature of a computer monitor. Didn't think we'd get that nerdy that quickly, did ya? Well, we're just getting started.